Unfortunately, Linda is not fully 100%, but has made the effort to join us online. Thank you, Linda, for doing that. But, you know, if we have Louise here, so if you're not feeling great, then please, you know, don't feel you need to stay with us. After my pleadings at the last meeting for everybody to be here to ensure we have a quorum meeting to approve the accounts, unfortunately, we're not in a position to approve the accounts. That is not anything to do with the Combined Authority finance team, but due to a lack of progress from our external auditors, Grant Thornton, who have put a paper together to explain where they are on the progress of the accounts. We'll hear later from Louise. Is anybody from GT joining?
Grant.
Oh, hello, Grant. Sorry. Sorry, Grant. I didn't see that. So maybe Grant will be able to tell us and confirm to us that we definitely will be able to approve the accounts at the November meeting, subject to the points you may wish to raise with us, Grant. So that's not on the agenda, but we still have a very full agenda to get through today. For those people who are presenting papers, can I just, you know, make the point, it's assume we have read the papers and therefore simply highlight any key points you want to make with regards to the paper, any key decisions you're looking for our actor to take, and obviously give us an opportunity to ask any questions, because I don't think we've got time for you to present in detail on the papers. Just assume that we have read them in advance. Okay, without further ado, shall we kick off, Wendy, in terms of apologies?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Peter Cullen at Sandwell, but we have Councillor Padder attending online.
Thank you.
Apologies also from Councillor Meeson. Councillor Mosquito is joining us online, I can see. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you again. Okay, very good. In terms of declarations of interest, as it says on the agenda, obviously all members reminded to the need to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest they have in any item being discussed during the course of the meeting. Receive any gift of hospitality should be declared where the value is thought to have exceeded £25 or £40. If you haven't made any declarations and you need to do so, please could you do so now? But if not, notification of substitutes, I think you've already picked up. Thank you very much indeed. Just some chair's remarks, just one or two of you have noted in the past, offer me just a little bit of summary of what we've been doing. So overview and scrutiny, there's obviously been a few meetings since we last met, which I've attended on our behalf. A lot of discussion around Trailblazer devolution deal and various presentations on that, which Councillor Baton has chaired. I've participated in the process of appointing a Director of Law and Governance. Satish is very kindly still with us and still with us till Christmas, so this is not your final meeting, but we have made an offer and has been, are we still doing due diligence on it? Sorry.
Yes, it's been accepted, and we're just going through the HR process at the moment. It should be ratified at board in late October, so we're hoping that the individual will be able to start in January.
Okay, so useful process. I went down to Coventry, met Martin Reeves, had a good walk around Coventry a couple of months ago. I met Councillor Collingswood in Wolverhampton. Super meeting. Thank you very much for facilitating that. Very happy to meet any individual councillors at any point if you would welcome such an opportunity. It was certainly a useful conversation we had in Wolverhampton. And given that it's nearly, two other things. One or two of us attended the West Midlands Audit Committee Chairs Forum that is coordinated by Telford and Wrekin. Useful session, I thought, but they did cover Treasury, cyber and the PSAA, all three of which are topics we've covered in this forum ourselves anyway. So I haven't come away from that thinking, oh, we're missing anything, there's something we should be covering. But it was a useful discussion, if nothing else, to confirm that what we're doing is in the right sort of ballpark. And then finally, I've got a meeting with the Mayor at the end of this month. It's sort of a year since I took over as independent chair of this forum. So I thought it was good for me to sort of check in with the Mayor, give some of my reflections, hear what he has to say. If any of you, again, got anything that you think it would be really useful for me to raise with the Mayor, please let me know. And then I'll obviously conclude whether I can raise it with the Mayor. But no, very happy to do that. And obviously I can feedback at the last meeting. So just a quick update on things that have been happening. Minutes of the last meeting. So this is agenda item 5. Could we just have a quick look at those? For those who were here, any comments with regard to the accuracy of those minutes? Be happy they're a fair record of our discussions at our last meeting. It's agreed. Fantastic. Thank you. Right, just going through a few of the matters arising from that meeting. Again, those of you who've been to a few of these before know that I'm quite particular about making sure that we follow up on the things we discuss from meeting to meeting. We talked about the obviously the accounts, and we'll pick up on that a little bit later. So maybe I should have just in the introduction, just on Coventry and Warwickshire Let. It's worth just obviously Sean from that organisation was originally a member of this group. You may have read in the press that the Coventry and Warwickshire LEP is being disbanded. So I don't know what the implications are, or we're working through what they are.
Yes, Chair, we're working through the implications of that. As far as the membership of this is concerned, that will continue for the moment, and there will be a sort of hybrid period as well to deal with it. So at the moment, we just stay as the membership is.
Okay. I may find out a bit more from the Mayor about what's going on with regard to the LEPs in due course. Is Councillor Backer.
My apologies, Chair, for being late.
It's all right.
Missed the train earlier.
Problem at all. Thank you for joining us, particularly in the circumstances. You can either.
Good. Thank you.
In terms of other matters, we talk about terms of reference, and so perhaps also worth just flagging we have now got a new head of governance.
Yeah.
And obviously you will be working with that head of governance and your successor to work through finalising our terms of reference.
Yes, that's right, Chair. And we were hoping to bring forward a report to this meeting in relation to the terms of reference and the corp and so forth. But I think in the context of the new director coming in, I think we've probably ought to do that as part of starting in January. So I think for the moment, I think we should sort of leave it as it is and then sort of make the arrangements in relation to any amendments at that point.
Yeah. I think there's one or two papers, the Grant Thornton paper, which provides some useful context. There's the, in terms of reference to other papers, there's also the single assurance framework as well, which talks about the role of ARAC in the context of the Combined Authority. So I think there's a number of inputs to that process which it'd be worth reflecting on. So be worth giving that appropriate consideration in due course. We've talked about Grant Thornton updating us on the annual audit, PSA. So the PSA process, which we've referenced, this is appointing external auditors for the 5 years from 2024 through to 2028. So they actually announced that yesterday. Timing is everything. But I couldn't actually see what detail there was, other than I should congratulate Grant Thornton on being the most successful firm in that process. And congratulations is the right phrase to use, Grant. But Louisa can just update us on that. But in terms of the precise implications of that for us, I couldn't actually tell.
No.
Okay, it wasn't just me then. Okay, that's fine. Strategic risk register we talked about, internal audit. We'll get an update on Treasury management output report. Yeah, no, I was given everything that's been going on in the financial markets over the last 2 weeks. I think I'll probably resist making any comment about that, but other than to be pleased to see how much we've fixed our borrowings going forward. And the Cyber Essentials report was just down here, got an update from Jason on that, just to say that the plan is still to have submitted our Cyber Essentials accreditation by the end of September. That was achieved. Thank you. I was going to say, given it's the 4th of October, I was going to. So that has actually been done. Good. Okay. So again, those people who are members of the committee in the past will know that that's something the Combined Authority did have. however, then lapsed, and we were quite keen to make sure that we resubmitted and got that accreditation. Obviously, we have now submitted. Okay, so we'll hear from Jason in due course as to whether that's been successful. Very good. Any other matters arising from any other members of the committee that flag? Anything else? Okay, if not, I think just on the forward plan, my only concern, I think, about the forward plan is how much we've got for November. And maybe when Satish, Linda, we could have maybe a little conversation as to the ambition that is set out for the meeting in November, and whether or not we need to cover all of those matters. Very conscious that we will be discussing the external audit process, signing off on the accounts. There's quite a lot of internal audit reports that are due to come to that meeting as well. So Wendy, we can maybe have a look at whether or not that's feasible, or whether indeed we might even need a bit more time. But other than that, I didn't have any other comments on the full plan. Any other thoughts, reflections from members of the committee? I'd be happy. Okay. All right. 2 minutes ahead of schedule. So doing all right so far. Over to Louise to take us through update from PSAA, and then for Grant Thornton to update us on the external audit.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm not going to kind of run through the report. I'll assume, as the chair said, that everyone's read it. But this audit quality monitoring report covers the work of local auditors for the 2019-20 financial year, which was clearly a difficult year. And the audit was carried out predominantly while the UK was in lockdown. But the 3 tests used to monitor quality are adherence to professional standards, effective relationship management, and compliance with contractual requirements. And so this was all set against the backdrop of Sir Tony Redmond's review, which was published in September 2020 while that work was being carried out, actually, and emphasised that local government audit is under-resourced, undervalued, and not having impact in the right areas. So Tony Redmond's report made a number of recommendations, and a further announcement proposed the creation of the Audit Reporting and Governance Authority, which interestingly will be based in Birmingham. Just take to an important point in paragraph 3.1. In summary, the results showed an improvement year on year, with 78% of financial statements audits reviewed assessed as requiring no more than limited improvement. So that's compared with 62% the previous year. The report also highlighted that only 9% of 2021 audits were completed by the expected publishing date. In relation to our own auditors, 9 audits were subject to review from Grant Thornton, and 6 were assessed as meeting the required standard, and 3 as improvements required. And the final point I'll make is in survey responses from Section 151 officers and audit committee chairs, the local impact of delayed audit opinions and the shortage of auditor resources, along with the level of fee variations, were all highlighted. And the full report can be accessed at the link at paragraph 3.5.5, and happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay, I just felt, this is an important report in terms of us as an ARAC getting comfort about the external audit process and being aware of some of the issues that are being faced in the delivery of external audits. So that's why I was keen for Louise just to flag the report. For those of you who like this sort of thing, I do commend it to you. It's not that long a report actually, but it is, I think, to be fair, Louise, you've summarised it very well in this paper. So any question? I've got 2 or 3 just quick observations, but any questions from others? Yeah, Councillor Collins. Sorry. Let's get used to that one day.
Thank you, Chair. Craig Collins with Wolverhampton Council. Yeah, I received an email yesterday from the PSAA, as I'm sure a lot of chairs did. And one of the things I noticed was that it mentioned 150% rise in fees. I mean, that's something to be considered, isn't it? And surely, I mean, I don't know, I can't remember what the fees were for the Combined Authority, but I'm sure that will have some kind of impact on next year's budgets. So I just wondered what the officers, Linda's or yourself, opinions were on that. Incidentally, it's good to see Linda on the webcam. Didn't recognise you there, Linda, with your hair different than a couple of years ago, the last time I saw you, so it's good to see you. Yeah, that's the first thing I'd like to say, but I have got issues, so maybe deal with that one first.
Yes, absolutely. So the Combined Authority's fee for this current period, 21-22, 68,000. It's set out in the report later on the agenda, but yeah, that clearly is a concern going forward. The 150% increase that was set out in the PSAA, that's hard to say, email that was circulated yesterday to Section 151 officers and audit committee chairs, clearly a concern.
Could I just come in on that as well? So good to see you too. I haven't seen you for a long time. So yes, and my hair was black, I think last time I probably saw you, so bit of a difference. Yeah, I think we have to acknowledge the complexity of the Combined Authority from when it first set up, and Grant will talk about this in his next report. We've changed significantly in the last 5 years in terms of complexity and scale. So I think whilst 150% is alarming, we have to recognise that the audit firms have struggled to resource the audits. There is an opportunity cost there to us as an authority. Previously, those who've been on the audit committee for a long time will know that actually I quite like to have got our audits done and dusted by the June committee. That saves everybody time, and obviously it costs us quite a lot of money as an authority to when the audits actually take much longer. So having time and resource spent in terms of Combined Authority staff time on a longer audit that takes us through to sort of October, November time actually costs us quite a lot of time in terms of our internal staff time. So I think there's an opportunity cost in there that's hidden, that will, I'm hoping, I've already had the conversation with Grant about actually if our fees do go up, then should they be successful in terms of securing the audit going forward, then I would hope that we can recover the position whereby our audit is back done and dusted by the sort of June, July time that we would normally be used to. So whilst if I'm expected to pay an increase in fee, I'm expecting also a sort of more efficient and effective audit process to follow.
I think we can all agree with that. Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Yeah, I mean, 150%. It's, it's not exactly just a rise in line with inflation, is it? It's something that we all looked at and thought, what the hell? So yeah, I'm interested to hear your views on that. But yeah, I mean, I think our current contract with GT expires in March next year. If we are appointed different auditors by the PSAA, have you thought about how you would work with the two sets of auditors for that sort of crossover period?
Chair, do you want me to? Well, I can try and answer it, but I can't answer it. It's probably better. We haven't seen the final list of audit appointees under the new contract. I was going to build it up when I came into mine. However, I think PSA is working towards sort of stability and not moving that many audits around. So I think I can't say for sure, but I think it's probably unlikely that we'll move off of Grant Thornton unless it's requested that. So I think I haven't seen the list, so I can't say we have or have definitely not got you yet. So and I know because I know PSA is working through the final discussions because it has to go through sort of ethical bits about conflicts, etc., and finalise that out. So, but I suppose if we answer that specific question, there are processes in place to hand over audits to successor auditors that we go through with Linda and the team. They will request specific information for us to have access to our files, and there should be enough lead-in time in terms of arranging meetings, I think, with officers, etc., to hand it over. So, yeah. So I think that process, we've done it before. We'll do it again. If you know what I mean. That's the nature of audit to a certain extent. You hopefully retain clients, but sometimes you don't, and you have that handover process. So there will be processes put in place. So I think from that perspective, I don't think you need to worry about the auditors talking to each other. You would then need to get used to a new way of auditing, maybe, but that's a slightly different sort of question.
Yeah. I think I suppose my question: how quickly will we know whether this is a hypothetical issue or a real issue that we're going to have to address?
I don't honestly know the answer to that question, but I think I know there are provisional lists around, so I would hope it would be shortly.
Okay. I think as soon as we know, clearly it would just be good to let the committee know whether we have an issue to manage, or there's continuity from going forward. Councillor.
Councillor Lemmy from West Borough Council. If audit risk assessment too high, how would you level it out?
Sorry.
If audit risk assessment is too high,
Yeah.
how do you level it out?
Linda, I don't know, do you want to comment on that? So, question around audit risk assessments and how do we make sure that it's appropriate for the specifics of our organisation?
In terms of the scale of the fee and the work, sorry, I'm struggling to hear a little bit.
Yes, effectively that I think is the point of the question. If 150% fee increase is in part due to an assessment of risk, how do we make sure that that risk assessment is appropriate for, and thus the fee increase that we'll be asked to take is also appropriate?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, we are engaged at a national level to ensure that we have been fully consulted in terms of the PSAA. We purposely opted in to the PSAA allocations. We see a huge benefit from us getting our audit appointment through the PSAA allocation. That does, as you say, mean we are at risk at having our fees set by the PSAA. We have to an extent, rely on their assessment in terms of what they feel is the appropriate level of fee. We will be one thing I am certain of is that we have been really struggling, I think, between the authority and our existing auditors with the scale of fee currently and what that is able to resource and how effective then the audit process has been with the level of resource that they are able to give us. So we will ensure that when we will do what we always do, which is when we know the level of fee that the PSA is allocating, we will have the conversation. Usually I have the partner from the relevant firm comes to the West Midlands FD group, because what part of the agreement is that actually all the West Midlands Mets and the Combined Authority all get the same auditor, so we have there's efficiency in that process as well. And we will just obviously have to talk to the new incumbent auditor at the time to ensure that their approach is reasonable and the fee is reflective of the work and the risk that we have. As I said, the scale of risk and the complexity of the CA over the last few years, it is not a surprise to me that actually we do need to put more resource into ensuring that we have an adequate audit undertaken.
Yes, I do understand that, but the auditor should actually prioritize the issues, shouldn't they?
Absolutely, I think that was sort of set out, that was set out by Grant Thornton in the plan that they presented to us with regard to this year's audit, and one assumes that they would continue to do so.
Yes, apologies. apologies, Chair. That is exactly right. So we have an audit. We have a plan that comes to us before the start of the year that the auditors will bring to us, that will include the full risk assessment, their view of the risk assessment, and what they will be, their approach to the audit, what they will be doing for the fee, and we'll get to see that as a committee before we agree the audit approach going forward. So you'll get full visibility of that risk assessment and what they are doing for the fee before we go into the actual audit itself.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Yes.
Just a quick question, Chair, about effective relationship management. The survey by PSAA, is that response rate typical? Because it's extremely low.
I don't know, Linda. I don't. Do you know whether that's typical or not? I assume you responded. I responded. So there's 100%. There's 100% response rate with the Combined Authority. But
I didn't want to ask that question.
I'm happy to answer it.
Yeah, to reassure the committee, we absolutely ensure that we respond 100% to all consultations in regards to, well, most things, but actually particularly around the PSAA work. Absolutely, we've responded to everything.
It's a fair comment, though. Obviously, you've got 400 odd organisations, so it's probably the findings are probably appropriate, but it would certainly be better if there was more. And it's interesting, when we had the combined the West Midlands Audit Committee Chairs Forum meeting, you know, this issue was right at the top of the agenda, wasn't it, in terms of people's concerns around, you know, the ability to get the audits resourced and completed on a timely basis. No question about it. So.
I was just going to say, I think in terms of relationships, I think probably one area over pandemic, we would normally do our own internal relationship checks as well. I think they've probably been hampered a little bit through the pandemic, but I think those will come back up onto the agenda again. So as well as your feeding back through PSAA, as a firm, you know, we will be reaching out to all our clients and saying, are you happy basically with the audit approach? So there'll be a two-pronged, there'll be a one-to-one in terms of, are you happy with what you're getting? And then there'll also be the national one as under the PSA contract. So I think as we sort of enter into the new era, you should be getting sort of client relationship checks coming back through the firm as well, just to make sure you're comfortable with what we're doing, or areas for improvement, or areas you like, hopefully, and what you wish to continue with.
Thank you. That was one of the areas on this paper that I was just going to pick up as well. I think there is a point here about only audit committees meeting privately with the external auditors. We should make sure, Wendy, that we have an opportunity to do that at the November meeting. I think it is good practice, and we should make sure that we do that. I have actually got a meeting with you, Grant, on the 18th of October anyway. It's just part of that process. But are there any other questions on this? Yeah, Councillor Conlon.
Yes, Chair, it was on exactly the same point that you just raised, the adherence to professional standards. It does actually state in the report, I think it said people meeting privately with external and internal auditors, and it's widely acknowledged to contribute positively to the organisation's governance arrangements. And I think we should have the opportunity to do that. So I agree with you.
I agree entirely. Just on one final comment, and then we'll hand over to the audit person. You know, the press release of the PSAA does say, you know, there are 10 firms that are qualified to deliver public sector audits. 3 of those firms chose not to participate in the process. I don't know why that would be. So there were then 7 firms that did participate, of which 6 have been awarded contracts. So, you know, there is evidence of a competitive process that the PSAA have overseen, but for the reasons sort of set out by Louise in the paper, which is taken from the report in 3.52, and the points that Linda's made about the change in the complexity nature of the Combined Authority. You know, those are significant factors driving fees, I'm afraid. But clearly, we should mitigate them to the extent we can through risk assessment, and we should obviously, as Linda has also said, highlight it as an opportunity if we're paying more fees to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to get the audit process completed on a more timely basis. albeit the deadlines for this year have been relaxed to 3rd of November and 3rd of September next year, I think it is again. Right, any other questions on that? Councillor.
Just responding to the question of chair's response. Very little obviously you mentioned, we discussed in the forum part. The problem is sometimes there are new chairs. They don't have the full understanding of it. So they can't respond because they don't understand fully. So only those who understood, perhaps they responded.
Okay.
That's probably the reason. Probably that's the reason why there's a push for putting an independent person on the committees.
Yeah.
Because some of the members in the old committee, they're changing every year, and the people don't have that understanding. But there are some people who are little like me, who are sitting like part of furniture, so don't have that problem. So that's their issue is people need to. I mean, this is a political problem rather than the administrative problem, I think.
Thank you. Right, shall we just touch on item 9, which is just an update on the progress of the audit. As I say, I think I teed this up at the beginning of the meeting. So is this Louise or Grant?
I think it's me, Chair. So
Thank you.
maybe what I'll do is just not the rest of each paper, but in relation to, I think the announcement from PSA literally came out when I was on a call, I think, with Linda and Louise yesterday. So just in relation, I think, but it does lead into some of the issues that are in this paper around, clearly Grant Thornton is very happy with the outcome of the tender process from our share of the market. If you look at it, we have actually deliberately reduced our share of the market slightly. It's gone down from around about 40% to 36%. And that is a conscious decision to pick up on some of the matters that you've been discussing there around having the capabilities and resources to deliver audit. So it's been a conscious decision to say that that's the area of the market to try and to link that into that discussion. I think in terms of the overall fees themselves, I know there are some new members around the committee, but that has been sort of an ongoing theme over the last few years in response to the FRC's commitment to improve the quality of audit across the board at our firm in relation to that. And I think they're succeeding in that overall. But it does mean auditors are expected to do a lot more work. There might be some areas where we either agree or disagree that given the nature of a public sector audit, is that the right focus? But that is the focus we have to work on, and hence that does drive through into increased fees. And it does pick up on the Redmond report around where it was saying that the state of the audit market, it was effectively broken in that sense, if you know what I mean. So I think that's why you are seeing those increasing fees. We had a conversation with Linda yesterday and with Louise. We are extremely conscious that with that increase in fees, there will be, if there already is great expectation, but increased expectation that we do deliver to those. So we're already beginning the planning for the 24, it comes in with 24, so it won't be next year's audit, it'll be the 23-24 audit that will, I'll make it right, 21-22, 23-24 audit that will actually impact by the new increased fees. So we are conscious of that, we are working with that, and we'll work with you around that. So I think we're still awaiting, I think why some firms didn't bid, there are hurdles to entering the market. Part of that is the FRC regulatory challenge. You need to have support behind you almost in terms of, I think, from technical teams that we've got in terms of quality and both financial reporting. So it's sometimes hard for firms to enter the market. They'll also be looking at conflicts and where they might be doing advisory work. Certainly some of some of the firms that didn't bid, they certainly have, they are active, certainly in West Midlands in the advisory market, and if you're conflicted. So I don't know specifically, but I imagine there's a number of those concerns, those matters that come into consideration around that in terms of what. But yes, it has been competitive. We felt we put a great bid in, but we don't know until the results came out. So whoever we begin to work with, I think probably if you picked up what Linda says, if you take PSAA as saying we're not looking to make as many with changes as we can. If the core is, I suspect we will still be your auditors going forward, given the big West Midlands chunk, if you know what I mean. So, but until that final bit of paper comes out, I can't say that. So that's really what's been driving a lot of that, and we're conscious around that in terms of the expectations upon us in terms of delivery going forward. I think in terms of how to send these into this paper, as you alluded to, Chair, we are still sort of working our way through. We had originally planned to deliver our audit to you for this audit committee, and part of that, the delay for this year has been down to, we've had some staff sickness on our teams. I think at the beginning of the audit, you had some staff sickness and people of your teams. But one of the themes that you'll see if we go through here is where we're still working with the authority is on, I suppose, getting sort of underlying transaction lists. That's been the bigger challenge for us in terms of our audit approach broadly is transactionally driven. And this year, and we mentioned it also, I think, in last year, that the way that the current sort of general ledger set up doesn't always make it easy to get to that transactional level. And we know that you've set a working group up now to look at whether we can sort of dive directly into the general ledger for next year, and hopefully that will overcome the issues. If not, that's been primarily the ones for delays in the audit, in where we are in the audit this year, in relation to getting those clean audit trails, and then sending samples out, and then testing those samples, and then following up any queries. I'll come on to more detail. So that's been fundamental, but we are working with the finance team. In response to your initial question about can you guarantee to get to the November Audit and Risk and Assurance Committee, the answer is our plan is to do that. And at the moment, when we go through here, you can see that there isn't anything at the moment. I think grants was one of the bigger areas that we were looking at. We've got samples of that out now, so we're working through that with the team, with your finance team, to get the evidence back for that, and then work our way through that. So we have a plan to get there. And at the moment, at this point in time, I don't see any reason why we can't get there. If that changes, we'll have to let you know. I mean, what I don't know, it depends on what we find when we get the actual samples back in relation to that. Just in terms of value for money, in relation to that, the NAO's Code of Audit Practice does assume that we issue our value for money report at roughly well, it should be at the same time as the opinion. They're still continuing to give us dispensation to 3 months within the date of opinion. That work actually is currently in progress at the Combined Authority. I'll be honest and say I don't think it'll be ready for November. If it is, it will come, but we should be ready for December because it is actually being worked on now. So we're looking towards moving to coterminous reports in the future. They should. The annual audit report, it is now called, and our annual findings report should arrive together, so you get a complete holistic view of the authority. Because of the pandemic, and I suppose that we call it sort of decoupling, it's not normally happened. We've normally been pretty good with yourselves around getting it out as quickly as possible. So we're hoping that will be December. The code, the NAO's Code of Audit Practice still says end of September. Hence, I've written to the chair to say that we're not going to make it in September. You know, and I suppose there's a formal piece of writing out we have to do, but just to say it is in train and we should be reporting broadly within the same timelines. And my proposal would be, if we agree with officers, it would be circulated to the committee outside of the normal cycle. We wouldn't see any reason for holding it back, but we'll maybe pick up in our conversation in a couple of weeks' time around how you wish to handle that.
Okay.
I know what I was going to say in terms of the key areas of where we are. If you go through, I suppose it's pages 23 and 24 of your pack. The bigger areas were just around groups, just to highlight there. No particular issues, but we just have noticed that one of the auditors does some tax work for work for one of their companies, and the ethical standards say if that's significant, then we might not be able to rely upon their work. So we're just going through that with our ethics people. I'm hoping that won't be an issue because I think it's a very small piece of tax work. Every 3 years, you have a technical review of your accounts. This year is the year for you to go through those accounts. So we're working through those with officers. I think where we see some changes might be around the group MERS. We had some adjustments to the MERS last year, but there's some specific lines in there, but I don't think it'll be affecting the bottom line, so to speak. And yeah, on property, plant and equipment, we're working through matters in relation to that and the audit trail. That did delay us a little bit, and working through specifically for yourselves because you've got big infrastructure. That's what we're working through at the moment. I'm currently not aware of any particular issues in that area. And then just turning over, the other areas were around, I suppose, the grants, you know, because effectively as an authority, you get a lot of money in from government, you give it out to authorities. A lot of that goes through your accounts as principal rather than just as agent. And again, the issue around that has been more around the audit trail and then being able to pick a sample. And that has taken a lot of conversations back and forth between ourselves and the finance team. I think last week or 2 weeks ago, we got to a point where that was possible. So those samples are out now. So looking at that, those are the key areas. We've picked that up. So I think all of our main samples are out now. So it's just a matter of getting through the work and be ready for you in November. And I wasn't going to go into the sector update specifically and take any questions that members might have.
Okay, thank you. I suppose thank you for the report. Thank you for the update. The one bit that caught my eye was this technical review of the financial statements and making sure that that is being dealt with properly, because I know last year again there were some challenges right at the end of the process with some additional changes that were needed. So are we on top of that particular aspect?
Yes, I think Grant, you'll be able to add to this, but the technical review has been started at the beginning of the process rather than left at the end, and Helen has reported back to Linda and I on that, that's the intention, to get that out of the way so that we can sort any issues arising.
Yeah, we've had initial responses back from the finance team. We've gone through those. I think we've just gone back with a few more queries, but the idea is that that shouldn't be a year-end, a back-end process. We have started it early. You know, history would say from other clients that, you know, financial instruments is always a tricky area, but I think, and the MERS, which is the movement and reserve statement, is a common area there where we're finding differences. And that's just mainly to do with the disclosure lines within the MERS and elements like that. So we're working our way through that. So yes, it should be well completed before we get to the final bit of the audit.
Good, thank you. The other thing I just comment on, I did find the papers at the back in the sector update really helpful. Thank you. And as flagged at the beginning of the meeting, I think there's a number of areas here which we should just reflect on in terms of our terms of reference. But you know, it's reassuring to see that, yeah, we have an audit committee and we have at least one independent member. We have an internal audit function that is providing support to us. I noticed that there's obviously a report on good practice in reporting, which I hope we're cognizant of when we're pulling our own reports together. And then there's a tool there for assessing the effectiveness of the audit committee as well, which again I think is something we should perhaps pick up in due course, as well as the say the terms of reference. So thank you for pulling those together. Actually, I found that very helpful. Any other questions, comments from other members of the committee on you've heard from Grant already? Councillor.
Chair. It's obviously disappointing that the sign-off of the accounts has been delayed. I just wondered what senior officers' opinions were of what the ramifications were to the Combined Authority reputationally for that.
So if I could come in on that, Chair, I think for me this is a national issue. The whole system of external audit in the public sector, as Grant alluded to earlier, feels like it's broken. There has been significant issues as a result of entering into the pandemic and lockdown that has caused a knock-on effect, ripple effect through the private sector firms auditing the public sector, which has meant there has been a knock-on delay to a lot of work. So, for example, one of the reasons, and this is what I've talked to Grant about, members will know that I have, I'm extremely disappointed that we haven't managed to deliver an audit to the usual excellent timescales that we manage, and I do have great expectations of our auditors, and I am frequently telling Grant about those expectations. One of the issues from my perspective that hasn't helped this year is that because of the knock-on delay of local authority audits and NHS audits, it meant that we couldn't have a combined authority interim audit. So an interim audit that happens at the beginning of sort of January, February time that feeds into the main audit is a significant part of making sure that we can deliver the audit in a timely manner. Now, Grant Thornton were unable to resource that because of the delays that were still happening as a result of the national issues. So I think from a reputational point of view, the government have allowed us, nationally, the sign-off deadline isn't till the 30th of November. So I am putting every part of pressure that we possibly can on Grant to ensure that we are fully signed off by the end of November. I don't think that it will be any reflection on the Combined Authority or the Combined Authority finance team should we not actually achieve that. I think it is part of a bigger national issue in terms of the audit resourcing. So I'm comfortable. I'm not comfortable with where we are at all, because I would like to have been signed off by now. But pragmatically, we are where we are. I want this signed off by the end of November, by the government deadline, and we will be working with our future auditors to make sure that we are audited in a more timely fashion going forward.
Thanks, Linda. I agree with everything that's just been said. There is clearly a significant issue in the market at the moment. It is not where we want to be. But I think the report previously said only 9% of audits had been signed off by the end of September last year. And I think I read another report that said only 45% of audits had actually been signed off by 31 March, by the 1-year anniversary. Clearly, the government set out a deadline of 30th of November. We should do everything in our power to make sure we hit that. And if we do that, I don't think there should be any particular reputational issues for us to address. But it's something we aspire to do a lot better at, no question about it. Just in terms of process, Linda Satish, in terms of, so if we're meeting on the 15th to receive the report from Grant Thornton and to recommend the approval of the accounts, there's a board meeting then, is there, on the 18th? So if everything goes to plan, is that the process by which the accounts can be signed off?
My understanding is, I mean, it might be for Satish, but you have delegated authority.
Yeah.
Although, might be on Satish, I think there's sometimes potential complication with independent chair, but I think your ARAC has, the board is normally used as a backstop.
Yeah.
To be honest, I mean, the way that the actual act is laid out is, I suppose, the council approves the councils in that vertical. I'll use the word councils rather than one authorities. Have to sort of approve the accounts for publication, but it can delegate that to a committee.
Okay.
So I think you've made that delegation to ARAC. So if ARAC approves it and gives it right I suppose the ability to sign off letters of representation, etc., then that's where we would stop. We have gone to the board in the past. I hate to say this because you mentioned it earlier, because of coracy of ARAC. And we've used the board as a backstop.
Yeah,
because of that.
Yeah. If we need that backstop again, it's there. We don't want to have to use it if we don't have to. Okay. Linda, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, it was just that I was absolutely going to say that. So it is delegated to ARAC, but clearly coracy on the 15th is a huge issue for us, because if we don't get coracy on the 15th, it's going to be too late for us to get anything to board on the 18th, which means we'll miss the 30th of November deadline. So coracy is absolutely essential for that 15th of November meeting.
Okay, I'll drive around the West Midlands picking up people. Right, very good. Thank you. Long session, but you know, there's a lot going on in the external audit world, and it's an important part of our role to manage that relationship with the external auditors. Obviously, still some news to come through in terms of the position from 24 onwards. But as soon as we know that, if you could let us know, and then probably communicate that to the committee. Right, we have now fallen a little bit behind schedule, so if you could catch up a little bit, that would be most appreciated, sir. Again, assume we've read the report, but just pick out any key highlights.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual update on health and safety as agreed as part of our governance arrangements, and will hopefully provide assurance to the committee that health and safety is being managed in line with all relevant statutory requirements. So in the section 3.2 of the report, you'll notice the key achievements from the past 12 months. To draw out the main highlight was a full review of our safety management system to ensure that adheres to the 45001 standard, and also take into account the change to hybrid working, our expanded programme delivery activity, and initially the mitigations for COVID-19. Within section 4.3, you'll see our annual delivery plan for this year. Prior to this being launched, we presented to strategic leadership team, emphasising the importance of demonstrating that we lead and promote a culture of health and safety. And a key component of our plan going forward is the Safety Differently campaign, which challenges traditional approaches to health and safety. And is hoped will become a cornerstone of our direction going forward. In summary, the Safety Differently campaign changes the way we think about health and safety, recognises people as a source of diversity and influence and insight and creativity into how we manage health and safety. It moves it more towards behavioural safety and less away from procedural safety. In terms of wellbeing activity, this is driven by the Equality, Diversity and Wellbeing team. We continue to work very closely with them. There's definitely been an increase, partly brought on by COVID, in the balance between health and safety and putting them on an even footing. Obviously, mental health and wellbeing are critical, and as part of that, we are looking to obtain the ISO 45003 standard for psychological and psychosocial health and safety within the next 12 months. In terms of our current position, there aren't currently any specific areas of concerns or items for urgent attention or improvement, but it will be essential that we continue to implement the objectives of the delivery plan for this year. As part of that, we're looking to launch a safety management system compliance reviews, which will assist in ensuring that the safety management system is consistently embedded across all directorates of the organisation. And also another key element is visible felt leadership, so making sure that all of our leaders are leading and promoting the health and safety culture. That's also very much aligned to the wider WMCA Better Connected campaign as well. We're vital that we look to develop further lessons learned and benchmarking opportunities. We have been quite inward looking due to the pressures of COVID as placed us in COVID recovery. So that is something we are looking to do in the next 12 months with other combined authorities and other partner organisations. And obviously we will continue to support the wide-ranging activities of the CA as it expands and continues to grow. Any questions?
Thank you very much indeed. And that last point was something I obviously get these reports in draft in advance, and it's one of the questions I had for Ben was, the opportunity to learn from others. It'd be lovely if all the best ideas in the world came from within the organisation, but I'm sure that we can learn from a few others on occasion. So very much encouraging Ben to do that. I was obviously very comforted to see we've retained the ISO accreditation, that we're aspiring to get the accreditation on going forward, and I was interested in the safety differently, cultural things. So, yeah, learning from your employees rather than seeing them as principal source of risk it's just an important mindset point. Albeit, I'm not sure they aren't always still principally a source of risk, and we should be aware of that. But it's it's a good thing. So thank you for that. I'd say I'd had an opportunity to go through this with Ben before. So welcome any questions or observations from other members of the committee. Councillor.
Just a quick question. Obviously, empowering employees to get engaged. This conversation I had at Leeds and Bedworth about health and safety as well, and a little disclosure, it's part of my day job as well, because I spend most of my day walking around in Quarry dressed in orange and with a hard hat on. So how do you see getting those employees engaged? Because at the end of the day, if they're not engaged and they don't take on board what you're saying, they'll go back to their old ways of doing it.
Thank you. That's a very valid point as well. And obviously, we've seen the challenges of moving away from fixed workplaces with the hybrid working model. So we're addressing that as well. So obviously, multiple means. The Safety Differently campaign will be assisted with a sort of physical in-person training course. And obviously, we'll have an intranet site, and we're looking at other promotional tools and methods of being able to get them engaged. It'll also sort of sit on. We've got a very robust committee structure. So we've got a strategic committee chaired by Pete Bond, who's the nominated director for health and safety, and also the health and safety committee, which is the consultative committee, which I chair, and that's another method of being able to get our messaging out there as well.
And one thing that we looked at was the possibility of asking an employee, how can you do your job safer? How can you do it slightly more efficiently? He may not come up with the best way of doing it, he may not come up with the safest way, but he feels as though he's been engaged in that process because he's come forward with an idea. You as the health and safety then have to look at it and go, you can't quite do it that way. You've got to just modify it a little. But because he's come up with the idea, he's more inclined to think, do you know what? That's not a bad way of doing it, and it incorporates most of my way of working.
Absolutely, and that's something we, as part of our visible felt leadership campaign as well. We have got behavioural conversations and safety observations as part of that as well, so we're looking to expand that within the organisation.
Any further comments, observations?
Just a quick one from me. You mentioned just about the so you have a consultative panel. and a normal health and safety committee, or strategic committee, did you call it? I just wondered if any sort of key issues are flagged up at those. Is that something you'd bring back to us at ARAC?
Certainly, yes. So there's a two-way communication between those two forums. And obviously there is, our structure chart within the safety management system does have an upward line up through ARAC as well, if anything was raised at Strategic Health and Safety Committee.
Thank you.
Any further questions on this report? If not, thank you very much. And we were talking earlier, I had the pleasure yesterday of being hosted by Ben and Peter at West Brom bus station and then at the Metro Training Academy up at Wednesbury. So I drove a tram from Edgbaston into Grand Central virtually, you'll be pleased to know, on the training. It's a very impressive facility, I have to say. Those of you who had an opportunity to go, it was very good. But thank you for your hospitality yesterday as well. It was very good to hear. So, right. Strategic risk update. Again, if we could keep this reasonably brief and obviously just flagging the changes that have been put forward, that'd be super.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. For anybody who's not seen one of my reports before, the cover page is a very simple document, but my focus of attention is therefore on the risk update slide deck. And within that, the key messages are at slide 6. So if we quickly have a look at those, this was discussed by the SLT back in September. And these are sort of overarching sort of statements about the sort of current risk register, the strategic risk register. So there is certainly something there around there being sort of several risks relating to sort of financial and economic situations and how they may contribute to each other and affect each other. So that includes a new risk which we have captured on slide 7. Regarding the financial sustainability of the Midlands Combined Authority model, noting that that is not specific to the WMCA, but is something that could potentially affect all sort of combined authority budgets. But there's also some of our other key risks captured as well. So on slide 5, we've sort of highlighted some very high risks and high risks around failures to deliver the opportunities and benefits of the investment programme, the cost of living crisis, inflation, global supply chain pressures, financial resilience of WMCA, etc. So there's definitely something there around those sort of coming together of sort of financial and economic risks. And the second sort of key message from the SLT was that notwithstanding all of that, and that sort of focus on the finance side, there is still a need to continue to embed risk management framework across the CA. And I've captured some of the points that I've been undertaking in the final slide. So I've sort of introduced a new risk network across the CA. There is a focus on sort of growing awareness of sort of risks and looking to provide visibility of both strategic risks and sort of risks within programs and projects, and developing risk activity at directorate level. If I then move on to some of the significant revisions, I'm just going to pick out a couple of points here on slides 8 and 9. So on slide 8, sort of talk about a discussion that the SLT had around the project programme appraisal and assurance risk. My colleague will be giving a report sort of next about that, but it's worth sort of pointing out that the SLT were very clear that when the last sort of portfolio of work is transferred to the SAF, they will consider that the overall risk as described there has been brought under control, and we'll be looking to remove it from the strategic risk register at that point. And then on the next slide, so slide 9, There are 3 risks there which we believe have now been brought under control, and all 3 of those will also be removed from the strategic risk register. So that was just a quick canter through perhaps some of the highlights I wanted to point out to you.
Thank you very much indeed. I've made this observation before. You know, one of the most important things for me is to see that this is dynamic, it's live, it's being implemented, and your reports thankfully do that each time you come to these meetings, because you demonstrate to us that, you know, the risks are being assessed, revised, changed, removed, and that's a really important part of this process. You know, our job is not to come up with the risks. Our job is just to make sure the process is being undertaken appropriately and properly, but obviously throw out some occasional observational question. Just on the financial pressures, given the events of the last couple of weeks, is there anything that we should be aware of from a pensions perspective that we need to be reflecting on, is one question. And I was going to ask a slightly cheeky question, okay, which is, how do we, if the SLT are determining that the capacity of the leadership team is correct, is there an independent perspective brought to bear on that?
Should I answer the second one, and I'll ask Linda to consider the first one. In terms of that sort of second question around the capacity of the leadership team, the update that was actually provided to me was not from the leadership team. It was from a number of colleagues who were able to provide updates on some of the activity that we said that we were planning to undertake. And so if I can really sort of simplify this, it was what were the controls that we had in place? What were the controls that we said we needed to undertake? Have we undertaken them? Have we completed them? And does that feel like it's the sort of the entirety of what we would expect to do to achieve that? And perhaps not surprisingly, but yes, when I then presented that to the SLT, they sort of agreed that range of activity had been completed. So
I did see that in the risk register, to be fair,
yeah,
in terms of the progress on the actions that have previously been set up. Okay, Linda, did you want to pick up on that point around pension?
Yeah, just to say, obviously, we have a triennial valuation. Yes, the current economic climate and what's happening will impact on pensions. We have a meeting. We have a monthly meeting as West Midlands FDs with the West Midlands Pension Funds. Our next one, I think, is around the 14th or the 18th of October. Clearly, the economic position will affect the pensions valuations and the prospective returns available that will have a knock-on effect into the future actuarial valuation. The CPI target that is used to value the actuaries used to value the pensions for the next triennial is in autumn this year, which is going to be extremely high. So I am expecting it's a risk to all the public sector, it's a risk to all of our Mets, and it's a risk to the Combined Authority. That said, from a financial perspective, we are not in a deficit position on a pension fund at the minute. Unlike I think, you know, we're not in a position the same as perhaps the metropolitan authorities are at the minute, but one that I'm watching closely, and one that will definitely have a negative effect on the size and scale of the pension valuations going forward.
Thank you. Yeah, clearly we've read a lot in the press around the impact of, you know, LDIs and the need for pension schemes to sell assets to make margin calls and that sort of thing. I suppose the other big headline from the last 2 weeks has been the changing gilt rates and the impact on the cost of debt as well. So I just, you know, they're sort of covered by external, you know, there are a number of risks reflected in the SRR which pick up external factors, which pick up financial sustainability, etc. But those are two obviously very specific areas that seem to me more relevant to the Combined Authority. And
I will know more. I will get a first-hand view from the pension fund, as I say, in the next week or 2 weeks when we've had a catch up with them.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Open it up for.
Say something.
Yeah, of course.
I am a pension fund auditor. Just in relation to that, yeah, I mean, I think we're monitoring it as well as a pension funds auditor. I think the point you make is around some of the collateral calls around LDIs, which I think sub-fund within the ITA pension fund, but we're not aware of any issues at the moment, given the size of the West Midlands pension fund. You know, circa 20 billion. I think the cash calls are fine at the moment, so we've not identified any specific issues. But like Linda, we're having catch-up calls with the pension fund. So I think at the moment I think from your perspective, it's being managed, and then you know we're also picking it up around where we are in terms of the pension fund.
Thank you. Okay, open it up for other members of the committee on the risk update. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of the discussion around the pension fund, I'll declare an interest as a member of the West Midlands Pension Fund Committee, so I won't go into that anymore. But just coming back to the report itself, I've got a question specifically about one of the risks, but the actual register, and I think I've raised this before at previous meetings, the text is so tiny, it's difficult to read, and I just wondered if there was any way that could be changed, the format could be changed. I know it's difficult, but when you've got failing eyesight like I've got, it does make it difficult to read. Risk 23, which is around metro availability, focuses on the cracks that we're all aware of that caused the metro to be offline for a very long time. I don't see any mention of the proposed strikes going up to the run up to Christmas. I just wondered if this had been considered in that particular risk as well, and if not, when will it be? Thank you.
So taking your specific question about the risks, this risk has changed a number of times. It was originally about the cracks. We then sort of expanded it, and it actually got sort of quite complicated. And so we've sort of focused it again on the sort of the main underlying issue. But you're right, it is about metro tram availability. So I think there is probably a need to separate it out. We've not quite got this one right. I know that the TFWM themselves have a lot more detail on their risks. So theirs is an area where I think this is working, the risk structure is working really well. They are absolutely capturing all of the information, broken down a lot more on what we're seeing on the strategic level. It's a sort of, trying to think of the right word up, it's almost like a sort of a cascading up of detail. So I would certainly expect them to have strikes issues and those other issues that may be missing here within their own register. But I will look to try and in the next iteration of this, perhaps find a way of being a lot clearer about what's specifically happening around the sort of cracks and what are the other things that can affect the tram availability. And at that point, it's more likely to be around that. So hopefully some confidence for you that I know that TFWM will have that on their risk register and they will be focused on that. But I will certainly look to bring it in here. In a way, that brings me then back to your first question, which is the more I try to get on here, the more words we try and get on here, the more difficult it is. It's not necessarily a good message for you, but the actual underlying risk register that I have is over 26 columns wide. I've tried to sort of reduce that down for you, but actually what's really going on is that some of those cells have just got sort of almost too much detail in them. As an alternative, I can almost put it on its side and we can run it on A4 sort of that way. The problem with that is that there's 23 columns worth, so it'd probably be about 23 A4 pages. So it'll make your whole pack a lot longer, but you may be able to read the detail. I'm not got many other ideas other than to keep trying to sort of condense things down. But you're not the first person to pick it up, and I'm just trying to improve things.
Yeah, it's, you know, you can expand it electronically, but yeah, in terms of hardware,
Sorry.
yeah, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. My simple question, don't you think so? The risk assessment function should be ensured by insurance company in case something happened to assessing the risk assessment?
I'm not quite sure I get the point. I mean, we have a risk framework in place, and that is the framework that we expect everybody to undertake. So whether they're in a project, whether they're in TFWM, or whether they're just using an Excel sheet like I do, the process of assessing the risks should be consistent across the organisation, and I'm more than happy to do. I can give you a presentation. I can share one with you if that would be useful around how that function works across the organisation and what is expected. But it is relatively, I think, relatively simple. What we expect people to do, and I'm not. I don't believe that there's a significant risk around that process, unless I'm missing the point. Sorry.
My simple one was that, is there any insurance company who can insure risk the pension funds?
Sorry, I see. I don't know about that. We've certainly got a lot of insurance in place, as I know, because I've now sort of taken over the responsibility for the insurance activity as well. But whether there's anything that we could take out insurance that would fill that gap, I genuinely don't know. Or if there would be a gap, for example. Looking at colleagues.
And maybe at the next meeting we could have a brief update on the position on the. Well, it'll obviously come through with regard to the pension scheme as part of the external audit and the annual accounts, but maybe a slightly broader paper setting out the position on the pension scheme to the extent it is relevant to this, obviously, this body.
Yeah, obviously, absolutely happy to do so. With regard to some historic liabilities, it is something we did before for some of the very historic liabilities around previous bus company when this organisation historically used to be the passenger transport executive, where we have mitigated some of the risk around the historic pension funds with an insurance company. I'm not sure at this point that is something that I'd be actively looking to do. I need to understand the scale of that risk at the minute, and I would imagine, given the uncertainty within the economic markets at the minute, that the scale of that, the cost of that may be a bit prohibitive, but I'm happy to bring a report, as far as I can do, a report back on the pension fund risks as details emerge, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense.
Could I just add, just on the Metro one, I think as Peter's rightly said there, absolutely there is a whole hierarchy of operational risks being monitored through TFWM. It's the strategic risks that arrive at this committee through the strategic risk register, and there is, as you can imagine, almost daily, hourly mitigations in progress throughout TFWM operational team to ensure that appropriate mitigations plans and proactive maintenance is in place to get as many of the trams available due to the crack issues that we've previously had. I think, to be fair to Peter, the issue around the strike has crystallised since Peter will have produced this report. So actually it will be an escalation into the next reporting cycle. But just for reassurance, obviously from TFWM's perspective, are working very closely with the Metro operator in terms of looking at the operational mitigations for that potential strike action.
No, very important point. So thank you. Any other questions on this before we sort of hand over to Jyoti, who can pick up the sort of response to risk in terms of the SAA? Not, over to you.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. So just in the spirit of limited time, I'll just give a brief overview and then open it for questions. So the report is being presented today The assurance performance report is being presented today to fulfil the commitment requested by the committee to provide an evidence base of demonstration how the West Midlands Combined Authority is complying with our devolution commitments in relation to major investment projects funded through devolved funding. So hopefully the report presented today provides you with that evidence base. Today it also coincides with the annual update and when the project was initiated to roll out the single assurance framework arrangements across all the delivery directorates. So just drawing your eye to section 3.2 in particular, hopefully you'll be able to see from the trends presented in the table today that we have been able to demonstrate that there is increased compliance to the single assurance arrangements across a wider range of portfolio areas. And also section 2.3 details the mitigations which are in place, the progress that has been made with the housing, property and regeneration team. So though they have not got their projects detailed in section 2.2, it does demonstrate that all the business readiness conditions are in place for when the investment funding will come through from that area. And the approach that they will apply, hence the overlap with Peter's report being presented today, in the fact that it feels with the evidence being presented that there is a reduction in the risk, in the fact that there is greater compliance across the portfolio areas, and also the arrangements that are in place now with each of the delivery directorates as well. Section 3 provides that analytical information across this particular reporting period, which again demonstrates not only is there increased compliance against wider portfolio areas, but the whole essence of what the statutory officers requested in terms of rolling out the single assurance framework mandate was to improve the quality of business case submissions and help to improve the maturity in project management delivery across the organisation. And there are some trends to support that in the period that's being reported today as well. And section 5 is just mention of the appended report that was accompanying the appendix, that was accompanying the report regarding the update to the single assurance framework. So again, that demonstrates that we are complying with our annual commitment to update the framework, which will be reviewed by central government. And the most significant change noted in there is it encompasses the changes in accompanying the approach that single assurance framework will apply to the skills directorate, housing, property and regen and transport. Any questions?
Thank you very much again. As I've said again, for me, it's so important to see evidence that the SAF is being applied. I would note it's been frustrating that housing, property and regen have taken this long to adopt its principles. I'm pleased to see they're almost there and they know the principles which they'll be applying, but it does feel slightly disappointing that it's taken them this long to get there. But we're there now. I think the only other comment I was just going to, your observations on the business cases was interesting, and the fact that for commercial and management case, this is 3.5, commercial and management case dimensions are the least mature. And I suppose in an environment of huge inflation, cost of living increases, that commerciality and that procurement dimension is critically important. And on the management case dimension, it seems to, your first point that you flag is about benefits realisation. Again, it's a real favourite topic of mine. People invest so much time at the early stage of a project, making sure that flows through, that actually the basis on which a project has been predicated actually results in the benefits is critical. So I would simply further encourage you and your team to focus on that management dimension to make sure that it continues to be addressed appropriately, shall we say. That was it from a good self. Again, questions from other members of the committee on the report that's been presented. Blimey, Thank you. I think, as I say, this has come a long way. It's reassuring to see that the work that's gone into here is also reflected on how we are perceived. Back to your point, Councillor, about reputation. It's, this is clearly a positive feature from the perspective of our reputation. So thank you very much, you and the team. Right, internal audit. I think we can keep this incredibly brief, would be my sense, given that you've got no reports to update us on.
Yes, Chair. Just to let the committee know that since we last met in September, we've just completed one piece of work around the delivery programme. We've issued a draft report which has come out as satisfactory assurance for now, but obviously we won't finalise that or agree that until we've given the auditee and their managers the opportunity to respond to that piece of work. But so far, from all of the work that we've completed to date, we've got no issues of any particular significance or concern to flag to the committee. And then the rest of the report from page 126 of the pack onwards just lets you know the outstanding work that's either to be commenced or we've already planned and scoped the work. Some of the work is under review, and we're hoping to bring the rest of those reports to the November and subsequent meetings throughout the year. But the key message so far to date is nothing of any particular concern to flag. Thank you.
Thank you. I suppose from our perspective, slightly more than a slight concern. We're still finishing off 21-22 audits, and we're 6 months into the new financial year. And there's a lot to do in the second half of the year. So are you confident you've got the resources and time and, because obviously you need to work with a lot of people within the business in terms of the delivery of this plan?
Through you, Chair. Reasonably confident. I'm not going to overpromise, but we're hopeful that we've got the resource and the time scheduled in. With regards to the 21-22 audits, they've sort of slotted into the timetable alongside the 22-23 ones now, rather than being the first priority. So they are assigned a time slot at various points throughout the year. But yes, we're hopeful, and we'll bring an update to the November and probably more importantly the January meeting with regards to where we think we'll reasonably be able to get to.
Okay, thank you. It's obviously reassuring to know there are no major issues arising, but this is such an important part of our assurance framework that we do need to make sure that things. And if you are having any issues, please flag them to me sooner rather than later. But so, given there isn't actually a huge amount for us to discuss in here, but anybody got any questions other than the progress? Councillor.
Just a comment, really, Chair. On the back of what you've just said, to reiterate that point about Peter meeting his deadlines and the timescales that he's identified, and he's given us reassurance on that. And also, if anything major was flagged, that he would notify ARAC in advance of the next meeting through the Chair.
Yep, through you, Chair. Yes, what we would do in the first instance, if we felt there was something of a particular importance that would result in a fundamental recommendation or a limited assurance report, we'd flag it to the Chair of ARAC first, and then we'd consider the options between ourselves as do we then go directly to the rest of ARAC members, maybe raise it to the next meeting and come up with the best route to keep everybody informed of that. But to date, we haven't come across any issues of that importance.
Thank you. Right, if no further questions on that, we obviously now get to the point where we exclude the public and press. The resolution is that in accordance with section 100A, subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business as they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information related to the financial or business affairs of any particular person. Is everybody comfortable with that?